tradition,
Okay.
which there are many, and there's also many in other parts of the country. Well,
right.
not so much in Japan, I'm afraid. But and yeah. But,
Could you describe in words what the elements are? It's a hard part to ask, but could you kind of like describe the sound of Chicago School?
The sound of the Chicago School, I was saying, it was a very free, free,
with jazzy feeling into it.
Yeah, unstrained, without tension, with a very free, open sound, without containment, or one electronic metaphor would be without compression, so to speak.
Without compression.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the residents, when you play with a very relaxed, on the basis of a relaxed airflow, and using airflow in the most relaxed way, which is the most essential element.
Oh yeah.
And there's let's say there's a way of approaching that and developing that through pedagogy, various sets of exercises, and I mean, I think everybody who's been raised in that tradition has done some teaching, as well as playing professionally, has added to it in their own way, and I have my some of my concepts I've developed out of that too, which I use in teaching.
Do you think that element relates to the Chicago, the place itself, or that are those elements or raised from the teachers and players, or does Chicago relates to
there's an aspect of the lifestyle in Chicago because it is a bit of a more relaxed big city as opposed to New York.
Okay.
And maybe even Boston is a smaller town than Chicago is, but that city has other traditions, of course. But I would say that in New York, you know, like everybody's carrying on a booklet of appointments. You got to be here, got to be there, got to be here, got to be there, got to do this.
That's the impression of New York
like that.
I have. Yep.
So it's that pace is not part of it. It is busy, but it's not the frenetic. It's frenetic.
Okay.
I don't believe, but I haven't lived there in a long time, so I can't speak of Chicago how it is in the last few years.
Sure.
I haven't lived there since I got out of
Right. Yeah. The only experience of Chicago is the 2 days like convention for me, for my dad's interpreter. So I didn't get a chance to look.
That's not a you have.
I haven't gotten any chance
to get a taste of any place. You have to stay there more than a week to just get a glimpse.
I know. Too bad.
A month or 2 months.
Yeah, I could try. Yep.
Yeah.
So, as a musician, do you feel that Chicago's the closest? Because I was kind of thinking to ask you about the relationship between your like more of the hometown or where you raised before your music career starts.
Okay. I was I had a kind of a unusual upbringing in that my father was an airplane pilot and a radio navigator, and he had just gotten his commercial pilot's license, and unfortunately there was a plane accident when I was 5 years old and he died. He was quite young. I was quite young. I say I was only 5, and so my life for my sister and my mother after that was very disjointed, and we lived in went back to my grandparents' hometown, Indiana, Valparaiso, Indiana, where I spent my earliest years in elementary school, and then we moved to Miami because of well, there were some lingering elements because of a lawsuit involved, and so we were in Miami, Florida for 5 years. That's when I started to study the cornet, and then we went back to Indiana again. And so I was in Indiana, Valparaiso, Indiana, for the last for high school and the last year of junior high school. So about 5 years, and then after that, of course, I went to Chicago,
Right.
back to Chicago,
Okay.
even though I was born there. Let's see. How does this count go? Yeah, I remember living up till the time of 18, living in 12 different places.
Wow.
And I went to 8 different schools.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Several elementary schools, 2 junior high schools, and only 1 high school. So those once things settled down.
Oh, wow. Because I was like that too, but not as many as you did. But and I was thinking of, so how.
So I'm saying is that my concept of hometown is not the same as most people's.
Right. Does that affect the way you perform as a professional? Because trying to people.
No, in some ways it was a suitable preparation for the years later on the road. We were traveling every day.
Right. Right.
So following, which brings to another point. I was able to during that time in Chicago play with many professional bands, which I got started, and led up to playing with one band, Tex Beneke and the Modern Airs, with whom I traveled to Europe, and that was just after I was at Northwestern, and then I got a teaching assistantship at Berklee School of Music in Boston, and so I went to Boston, and actually. My first semester and Sadao Watanabe's last semester overlapped.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, we played in Herb Pomeroy's band at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So I was in Boston, Berklee for 7 semesters.
Okay.
And there forged many friendships, which and with future colleagues, and we. When I finished at Boston, I joined Stan Kenton's band, and that's what brought me to Los Angeles.
Right.
And so we recorded and toured with Stan Kenton for about a year and a half, couple of years, and then at that time there were many of my friends from Berklee who were on Buddy Rich's band.
Oh.
So I was able to join Buddy Rich's band after that. And I was first trumpet player for both Stan Kenton's band and Buddy Rich's band in those years. And so I think at one time we had, with Buddy Rich's band, it was like Richie Cole was on the band, Pat LaBarbera, let's see, Pat LaBarbera later played with Elvin Jones, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And then Rick Laird, who was later on the bass player for Mahavishnu, and the John McLaughlin early 1970s band. And there was, let's see, in the trumpet section, George Zotz, who went back to Boston and taught at Berklee for many years. But at any rate, there were a number of fellows I played with at Berklee who were on the band. We were all in the band together, and we turned around. We got to do some nice things. We even played for the Queen of England one time.
Wow.
Yeah, command performance. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like so many. Well, of course, everybody has places, but you got so vast variety of places you have so many memories from, and does that when you were going to the new places, when you were moving in and out, do you use some of those elements when you were playing together in the band or as a professional musician? Because when you were, it might be my opinion, but when people travel a lot, that affects to how you reach to the other band members when they're playing together. Does that relate?
Well, we're just trying to play music together. I mean, the music is like what were you hearing, and we off the stand we frequently talking about the music, like in Stan Kenton's band, we rehearsed.
Right.
We were coming into preparing for a recording of the music of Dee Barton, and so I had the trumpet section rehearsing. Every time we had a stop for a half a day, we had a sectional at the hotel. And so it was really in shape.
Right.
And so so that's what you do. You're trying to you're not telling biographical stories all the time. I mean,
right.
Except where you're hanging out, maybe. But it's always there's lighter moments too. But
okay. So their backgrounds, well, musically, of course, but those things don't really matter when you play music.
Not when you're on the bandstand.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, of course.
Now you're thinking, like about the music.
No, I was curious about how you reached to the different cultures in music.
Well, in those years, we were primarily thinking as American jazz musicians,
right.
And if we would do a foreign tour, we were visiting jazz musicians, American jazz musicians. And probably we saw it through a kind of a lens. It really wasn't until I started playing with Toshiko Akiyoshi that I could, in playing her music, that I could see seriously another perspective of cultural influence bearing on an interpretation of jazz, or another perspective in jazz. Although, at one point when I was at Berkeley, we did do a recording of various other countries' folk songs in jazz arrangements. Yep. I didn't participate as an arranger, although I just was playing, but that was introduced there, and I had given some thought, done a little bit of research on Indian ragas and so forth, but in terms of an actuality of preparation of music with an ensemble, it wasn't until in Toshiko's band, when we were preparing her music, such as Kogun, Long Yellow Road, and especially Kogun, which before we arrived in Japan, when we performed that, we just had a tape of the Kotsusumi and Otsusumi players, and she timed it was played over the PA during a concert, and then and she timed the counting of the introductory section to that. Although when we came to Japan in 1976. At the end of about January 27th, 28th, 29th, January 30th, 1776. 1976. This is in 1776. Wow. 1976. When we played at Nakano Sun Plaza, we had the actual Otsusumi and Kotsusumi players join us.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so there they were, performing, in the way dressed in their costume, and traditional clothes, and we experienced it as musicians more directly. And then, of course, Japan, being in Japan, and it was just really an eye opener. I was totally hypnotized by the time I left. After 2.5 weeks, I started studying Japanese before the next story. Go ahead.
ちょっと切り替えて切り替えたい。
あ、sure。向こう行っても大丈夫。
AC に切り替え。
あ、はいはい。
これちょっと一旦止めたい。
Hang on 1 second. We are running out of batteries. So we'll just put it.